Okay, so this offensive line for Oklahoma going into fall camp, it's one of the most intriguing positions for the Sooners, mainly because we want to see exactly how two positions, being the right tackle position and even the left guard position, are going to play out. I think it's pretty safe to say center and right guard are pretty solidified, being held right now by Branson Hickman and going to be held by Fabichi Wewu. Now, the question is, what do you do with Troy Everett when he comes back? Because last year you had a chance to play him at guard a little bit, didn't really work, but he excelled for you at the center position. So more than likely when Everett comes back, you see him as a center, as a backup center to Hickman, not as a guard. Now, before we get to right tackle, I want to talk about the left guard position, because looking at that position, this whole spring, I was really talking highly about Heath Ozaida. That's the guy that I think probably has the most upside of what we could see at the guard, just because there's also not a lot of tape on him. He only played in 4 plays last year, where he had 1 pass block, 3 run blocks, but had a run block grade of 53.4 and a pass block grade of 72. So not a lot of data there to go off of, but Heath Ozaida has put in the work during the offseason. But you look at a senior or a tenured guy in Gary Hatchett, who, although last year didn't have maybe one of his best years, where I think was a pass block grade of 43.3 and a run block grade of 62 for a total of 264 snaps. If you go back to 2022, where it was his best year, he had a pass block grade of 67 and a run block grade of 70.1. But he only had 71 total snaps. So between those two, I think Heath Ozaida is probably your best option at left guard. And honestly, that's who I would pick. But when you go to the tackle positions, this is where I think it becomes really intriguing for you and I as an Oklahoma fan at who is going to take over on one of those two spots. Before we get into it, though, if you guys haven't, hit the like and subscribe button. Do me a favor. Got a baby here. We need as much to help as possible to continue to grow this channel. So hit the like button. All right. Right tackle and left tackle. So I think a lot of people are expecting Jacob Sexton to play the left tackle, although I think he's pretty versatile and he could play either right or left. But you also have another guy on this team that's pretty versatile, and we'll get into that one here in a second. The name that you're hearing coming out of the summer into fall camp that is the most sexy, I guess, is Jake Taylor. Jake Taylor was the 4-star recruit out of Vegas. Remember Bishop Gorman? And I think there is a lot of hype around him and what he can be, and I think he can be a really good tackle for you. If you look at what he did back at sorry about that. If you look at what he did back in 2022, he had 41 total tackles. Now, or 41 total snaps. 38 were in the run block. So he had a run block grade of 56.7. He only had 3 pass blocks, which he had a grade of 73.3. So really hard to go off of the 2022 data and say Jake Taylor is going to be this all-great tackle for Oklahoma. You look at what he did last year, 47 total tackles. He had 32 of them in the Arkansas State game. So I'm probably going to say take away the Tulsa, Iowa State, and Arizona game and just look at Arkansas State. Arkansas State, he had 32 total plays in that game. He had an offensive grade of 61.5, but he had a pass block grade in that game of 76.8. His run block grade was only 57.8, so there definitely needs to be some improvement there. But definitely, I think pass blocking scheme is going to be his strong suit. And when you look at the tackles that Oklahoma has potentially going for the right spot, I mean, the pass block, I think, is the better of every single one of them between Brown and Tarquin. I mean, you could look at Jacob Sexton, but I think Jacob Sexton's probably going to end up on the left side of the ball. Now, Spencer Brown, although he was not, I think, what we all thought he would be in the spring, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if maybe he's just got something nagging him a little bit. Or maybe if it was just, hey, like a transition, moving things like that, but that's always not easy on people. I will say Spencer Brown, throughout his career at Michigan State, he was good. And I think he has a lot of upside. If I had to compare him to somebody on the offensive line, probably an Anton Harrison. If you guys remember, Anton Harrison kind of had a lot of penalties on him, unnecessary penalties, but he was a really athletic guy. I think Spencer Brown is very similar in that aspect. Back in 2022, he had 783 total snaps in 22, 61.1 pass block grade. The worst games he had was against Ohio State at a 34.2 and Penn State at 24.7. So knowing that those were probably two of the better defensive lines that he saw, that probably doesn't make you feel that great. But he had 61.9 in the run blocking scheme. So that makes you feel a little better. And then back last year in 2023, he had a total of 400 or 541 total snaps played, 63.7 in the pass block. Again, two worst games being against teams with good defensive lines, Minnesota and Penn State. He fared 73.2 at Ohio State, so maybe that makes you feel a little better, but a 61.6 in the run block. So regardless how I look at it, I think Spencer Brown is in the backup spot, but I think he's a very good backup and a guy that late in the season, I think could maybe push somebody for a starting role if you kind of don't feel great about the left tackle or the right or the left tackle or right tackle. Sorry. Now, I told you earlier, there was a guy that's intriguing me about a guy that's like Jacob Sexton, where he could flex, right? He could play right or the left side. That's Michael Tarquin. Now, we've talked about him before, but here's what I want a lot of people to remember. He had 20 career starts at Florida, 10 at left guard and 10 at left tackle. So he's very familiar with the left side. Moving him at USC, I think there was a little bit of unfamiliarity of playing right tackle there. So again, I think there's a possibility where you might see him move back to the left side potentially as left tackle and maybe move Jake Sexton to the right tackle spot. But I really think the staff likes Jake Sexton at the left tackle. And I think Tarquin under Bill Bedenbaugh can progress on the left side or on the right side a little bit. Here's what I want people to look at in terms of what he was able to do at Florida, because I think a lot of people look at his 1 year at USC and say, Shane, we don't want you, bad, right? Hold on before we get to that. 262 rushing yards is what he was a part of in that blocking against Florida State in 22 as a redshirt junior. He had was part of that blocked for 374 rushing yards against South Carolina. He paved the way for 291 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground against A&M. And then, you know, he was a part of that offensive line against Georgia as well. He did 12 games at left and right tackle as redshirt sophomore for Florida in 2021. Like, I think when you look at it, that line in 2021 only allowed 14 sacks, 1.08 per game, which was the lowest in FBS and second in the SEC that year. So that was the same game that that was the same year they blocked for 717 total yards against Samford. So Michael Tarquin, I think, is probably the dark horse that you have to watch on the offensive line at the left side. Although right now it's probably Jake Taylor's spot to lose, Michael Tarquin is a guy that is very viable to come up and take it. However, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you feel really good about it because both Jake Sexton and Taylor, they haven't been the most healthy guys. So knowing that you have a guy in Tarquin that can swing to the right or left side and be a very valuable player for you there, that's got to make you feel good. So going out of fall camp into the season, what does the offensive line look like? Well, my final prediction for it is it's going to be Branson Hickman, Fabichi Wewu, obviously the two easiest to guess. At left guard, I'm going to say Heath Ozaida. I really like what he's going to be able to do. Then you've also got Jake Sexton in the left tackle spot and Jake Taylor at the right tackle spot. Now, I do want to point this out. Shout out to Brandel Black, who was commenting on one of our polls that we posted earlier. And I just posted, hey, who's going to start at right tackle this season for Oklahoma? And 71% of the people so far have said Jake Taylor. 15% have said Michael Tarquin. 12% have said Spencer Brown. 2% have said other, which would probably be one of those freshmen that have came up. People really like those guys. He made a very interesting point and a possibility that I think Oklahoma could see. Brandel Black said in the comments, I think Tarquin is going to start week 1, Spencer Brown week 2, and Jake Taylor week 3. I don't necessarily know if that is the exact order, but it would not shock me to see Bill Bedenbaugh roll out all 3 of those guys at the right tackle spot each week as a starter to see how they produce, how they play, And then before you go into SEC play, that's when you make your final decision of who's going to be right tackle. So don't be surprised if you see Bill Bedenbaugh. Test it out with the lineup and see what works. So guys, if you have not already and you guys have made it this far, thank you for watching. And if you guys haven't, make sure you hit that like, hit the subscribe button. Till next time, Boomer.